Houseplants make our homes feel alive and cozy, but have you ever wondered where they come from, how they're grown, and if our love for plants is actually hurting the environment? I know that there's a lot to unpack here, and I know that discussions around sustainability can feel really overwhelming and just impossible. And of course, there's another hobby where sustainability is an issue. I get that. If you don't feel like you're in a place where you can watch this video and leave feeling empowered to make choices, and instead you'll leave feeling overwhelmed and stressed about this hobby that you've loved for so long, please don't watch this video. I will not be offended if you click off this video. I understand that this topic can be really overwhelming for people, so absolutely put yourself first. Do not watch if you don't feel like you can. Houseplants have become insanely popular over the last decade, which has led to some questionable practices, and the biggest issue is plant poaching. This is when rare and exotic plants are illegally taken from the wild to be sold, often wiping out entire plant populations. A huge example of this is happening in South Africa, where succulent poaching has skyrocketed since 2019, all because people want trendy rare plants. And social media has a lot to do with this as well. Many succulents and cacti take decades to grow, so when they're taken from the wild, it's not just a single plant disappearing, it's an entire ecosystem being disrupted. There have even been major bust operations where over 1,000 rare cacti were seized in Italy, worth over $1.2 million on the black market. And in 2022, a man was actually sentenced to 2 years in prison for stealing hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of succulents from the California coast and selling them. They literally put a guy in jail for this. Plant crime is real. And it's not just about the plants themselves. This kind of over-harvesting can cause soil erosion, hurt pollinators, our little bee friends, and disrupt entire ecosystems. You're not just removing one plant, you're disrupting the entire ecosystem. So if plant poaching is such a big issue, how do we make sure we're not contributing to it? Number one, buy nursery grown or farm grown plants. Legitimate growers will have printed tags showing where the plant came from. If you're shopping for succulents, try to buy directly from growers rather than random online sellers. Think Etsy. Just searching this type of plant you want and just picking one of those sellers. Be careful when you're doing that. You want to support local plant shops instead of big box stores. I know Trader Joe's and Home Depot plants are tempting, trust me. I get it. They have some really good deals sometimes, but they're often mass produced by giant greenhouse corporations that use tons of land, energy, and water. The way that they grow greenery isn't actually very green. Avoid plants grown in sphagnum moss or peat moss. I had actually heard about peat moss not being good for the environment. The I don't know, whatever it's called when they take the peat moss out of its natural whatever. The removal of peat moss, I have heard, is bad for the environment, but I didn't know about sphagnum moss, and this is just one of those things. I use sphagnum moss so much. Exhibit A, my moss pools. So is there any way that we can just have one thing be safe from this unsustainability nightmare? I mean, come on. Sphagnum moss. Peat moss is stripped from wetlands, which releases carbon and disrupts ecosystems. So instead, look for alternatives like compost mixes, coconut coir, or wood-based substrates instead of, your sphagnum moss and your peat moss. And number 4, be mindful when buying rare plants. If a plant is labeled as rare, you want to ask questions. Was it grown from seed or propagation? I've actually had people ask me this when I am selling a plant. They ask me if I know where the plant came from. And oftentimes I don't, other than the fact that I propagated it off of a plant that I purchased in the past. But do I know how the original plant was grown? Where the original, not propagation, came from? Was it extracted from its natural environment? I never know. And if you can't find clear answers, it might not be the most ethical choice, I'm learning. It should state clearly on there where it comes from, and if it doesn't, it's a red flag. As a plant researcher that goes by the name Jared said, there's an interesting tension to sit with. This plant that's simultaneously everywhere and yet may no longer exist in the place where it evolved over millions of years. So just think about that. The fact that these plants that we love, the fact that I'm surrounded by them, like they could not be in their natural environment anymore. And I have them here in my very unnatural grow tent environment. So once we have our plants, how do we care for them in a more eco-friendly way? One easy way is stitching a synthetic fertilizer and making your own. I found this really neat DIY liquid fertilizer recipe. I had known that you could make compost stuff and get a really nutrient dense soil by using compost, but I didn't consider making your own liquid fertilizer. So this recipe is actually really cool and I'm gonna try it, but I'm using up the rest of my fertilizer that I currently have. So first you want to fill a container with water and add banana peels, compost, or grass clippings. Let it steep for a few days, then strain it. Then you want to dilute it with water and use it to fertilize your plants. How cool is that? I have so many banana peels, okay? This is something I could do so easily and it would save money because like I said, I'm trying to use up the rest of the current fertilizer I have, and if I could just make my own fertilizer at home and have it work, be successful, game changer. That would be a game changer. And another really cool fertilizer hack that I found, DIY fertilizer, is using Epsom salts. I have a huge bag of it, so I got really excited about this one. You might not be as excited about this one, but I was like, oh my gosh, I have Epsom salt. That's so cool. So they say that the Epsom salt fertilizer is great for your garden plants like tomatoes, peppers, and roses. It's basically to get more magnesium into the plant as a nutrient, but you want to dissolve 2 tablespoons of Epsom salts into a gallon of water. Shake and use it as a foliar spray. And that's it. And you do just want to make sure that you're using it on plants that are actually, it's for magnesium. So the stuff that I read said that you want to make sure you're using it on plants that are showing signs of a deficiency in magnesium. For example, I have this plant and the leaves are yellowish, and it said that that can be a sign of a nutrient deficiency with magnesium. So that would be a good contender for spraying with Epsom salt. How cool. I would have never ever known. The website I was looking at did start to list some natural pest control, but like I said, proceed with caution. So one is sprinkling cinnamon on your soil to help prevent fungus gnats. I have seen that on social media actually, and I'd never heard. Vegetable oil spray, you want to mix half a cup of vegetable oil with 2 tablespoons of dish soap, shake and dilute with water. Tomato leaf spray, soak chopped tomato leaves in water overnight, strain and spray on plants. This naturally repels pests, the leaves on the tomatoes. But, and here's what I've been saying, you need to be careful with homemade pesticides. Not all DIY solutions are safer. Some of the common homemade sprays like vinegar or bleach based ones can actually be harmful to plants, pets, and the environment. Always test before using, and when in doubt, go for an EPA registered organic pesticide. I know you've seen your favorite plant influencer or even just read online the stuff that I just said, mixing vegetable oil with dish soap. And I've done this, but essentially what you're doing is mixing chemicals and it's just unregulated versus the pesticides that you can buy in store. They go through a series of tests. They have to follow a series of regulations to even make it onto the shelves. So you can feel safe knowing that this pesticide has been tested and proven to be safe, and if it isn't, it will say on there not safe for animals or not safe for children, or it'll have a warning on there. Versus mixing your own concoction of chemicals at home, it's just risky, it's unregulated, there's no way to know what kind of reactions you're going to get to that, whether in yourself, your pets, or your plants, or your kids, whatever it is. So just be careful. Probably the safest and most eco-friendly option, it seems like, is to just buy one of these EPA registered organic pesticides from the store. At the end of the day, growing plants sustainably doesn't mean never buying plants from big stores or avoiding rare plants forever. That would be torture. It just means being more mindful, asking where plants come from, making small swaps and trying to reduce waste where we can. This is not about perfection. It's not about never doing something ever again. This is a special hobby for a lot of people. It is for me. And so this isn't to ruin your perception of it or to make you think like, oh, I can't do anything in this hobby without like someone yelling about sustainability at me. It's not about that. It's just about making small decisions where you can, where you feel comfortable, and just being aware of the impact that this hobby might have on this earth that we live on. I would love to hear your thoughts. Do you think about sustainability when it comes to houseplants? Do you agree with me that this is something we should be thinking about? Is it overwhelming? Let's chat in the comments. Leave a comment down below. And if you found this helpful, don't forget to like and subscribe and share. It really helps support the channel. Thanks so much for being here, and I'll see you next time.